Hi, everyone. I'm Taney Roniger, and what follows is a recording of a conversation I had with Daniel Hill on the occasion of the closing of my show at Studio 34, Drawing is a Verb. The talk took place on Friday, April 7th, 2023. And before we jump into the video, I thought I would just show you a few images, just 2 or 3 minutes, because you don't really get a sense of what the show looked like in the talk. You'll see pieces of a couple of pieces. You'll see fragments of a couple of pieces, but not pieces in the whole. All the works in the show are charcoal on watercolor paper, very thick paper, hot press. They are quite large, as you'll probably be able to see. The largest one sitting behind Daniel, actually on the wall behind Daniel, is about 96 by 52. Others are of comparable size. Actually, no, there are three smaller works in the show. By smaller, I mean about 30 by 50. There are two of those, and then there's one that's quite small, 18 by 13, something like that. I will tell you that the white that you see is just the white of the paper coming through. I don't use any white charcoal or anything. It really is just regular charcoal. And you may, well, I think there's a detail coming up. You may get a sense of the surface of the pieces, but maybe not. It'll come up in the talk. You'll see the surface is quite important. There's a little bit of a grain to it. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is the kind of work you really have to see in the flesh. So anyway, I will now sign off and you can get to the talk itself. One last thing I will say is that Daniel and I are planning to do another talk very soon, in a couple of months, not on my work or his work, on an idea that we kind of touch on in the following conversation, but we don't really get into enough. And this idea is 4E cognition. 4E cognition and the arts. So that is the topic of our next conversation. So without further ado, I will let you get into that. And once again, I do want to thank Daniel Hill for agreeing to do this with me. It's really a lot of fun and great audience. Oh, yes, one last thing. The questions at the end, unfortunately, the audio in the in the audience area was not working very well. So we have put subtitles here with the questions, try to reconstruct them as best I can. If you're watching this and you were one of the questioners there that night and I've wholly misrepresented your question, let me know, I'll change it. But I've done the best that I could. Okay, so thanks for watching.
Yeah,
us off.
the thing that's so exciting about this is to just have a conversation, not be too formal. Uh, Taney and I have been having conversations since for several years now, and we share a lot of the same ideas and concerns about the art world and what the experience of making art is like now. And so it's really nice to just have I always tell my students, like sitting around the kitchen table just talking. And of course, with these fantastic drawings. And, you know, when I came in for the opening, because I'd never seen these before, the first, I mean, they have a huge impact. But one of the first questions that I asked myself, because I'm an artist and I wonder about these things, when you begin a piece, you have this huge piece of paper, this blank piece of paper, which can be rather intimidating. Where do you start? Do you know what you want? Do you have a vision of what you want, and then you try to match that vision? Is there some discovery? Is it all discovery? Is it somewhere in between?
Right, right. It's a good question. First of all, I'm not starting with a big piece of paper. No, this paper is hugely expensive, so I don't just hang it up and go right into it. I think about it a lot before going into it. I should say a few things about the paper. While I'm working on it, when I finally get to the big one, I can do a lot of erasing, and I do a lot of erasing, and moving things around and shifting darks and lights. So the paper could take a lot of abuse up to a point. At a certain point, there's nothing more I can do. It just gets pulpy and it's destroyed. So I have to, going into the big one, I have to kind of have an idea of particularly where I want the lights, because those of you who work in charcoal will know, once you get charcoal on the paper, you will never get it fully out. You get it partially out, but never fully. So the areas that are pristine white, I have to know, where they are going to be, so that I can work around them. So I do studies, like smaller scale studies.
I was just going to ask that. You do studies.
Yeah.
So the form that is there at the end, at the beginning that that's going to be there, or is in a study? Do you have that, or is it something that's discovered?
By the form, you mean the light, the central event, right, in the middle. Yes, I have an idea that they're going to be there. They always change. The forms change as I'm working on them. But yeah, I know. I definitely have to know. But I think actually, I'm not really answering your question, because maybe what you're really asking is, how do I know what I want to do? Like, even when I'm making the study?
Yeah.
Because that's a question I ask or wonder about with every artist. Like, yeah, how do you come up with this? How do you just sit down and just do this? No, I mean, for me, I've thought about it a lot recently, and what it is, I will feel it as a bodily sensation, something that needs to be done, like, something is, gravity is pulling this down, and then there's going to be a horizontal there, and I think they're going to be bands. It's like I feel it like that. And usually I dismiss it, because it seems so simple. I think it can't possibly be interesting as a work of art. But if the idea stalks me for long enough, then I know that I have to do it. And so I'll make a maquette, and then, even when it's small scale, I have no idea if it's going to translate into the larger scale. So I've just kind of.
And how big are the smaller ones?
I'm really impatient with them. I mean, they're tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are big drawings.
Yeah.
What is the importance of scale in your work?
I realized at some point that for me, art was all about standing in the presence of something. And I, I'd never worked this large before. I just wanted to make things in whose presence I stand, things that render me small, let's say, things that are bigger than me. That for some reason became important.
Yeah, there's something that I was struck about them, and there was a little girl standing here in front of this one.
Yeah, the opening.
She was standing up close, and I did the same thing, and I wondered if she was having the experience that I was having of having something wrap into your peripheral vision.
Yeah.
There's an immersive quality to that you just can't get from looking at a little image on Instagram. It's a physical presence.
Right.
that wrapping into the peripheral vision, actually in the book that we'll talk about, she talks about the magic that occurs in the peripheral vision.
Right, right.
Is everything okay?
Well, do we have another? We have another one.
We have two.
Okay, we'll let him fiddle with that. I think we'll just go on.
Yeah, just go on.
Okay, okay.
This is going.
Okay, good.
So yeah, the scale, that immersive quality is something that is lacking. These days it seems like if you're an artist, most of the time your work is going to be seen, on this tiny little screen. And even on the screen, it's going to be only that big, and it's really not satisfying in terms of having a presence.
Yeah.
And I was just struck with these drawings. You can't really get a sense of them unless you're there with them. Mm-hmm. And there's also a tactile quality to them as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Instagram is great for people who make images, right? They think of their work as images. They make imagery that can easily be apprehended, as an image, a visual image. But for me, I don't think of myself as an image maker. I think of them, they're sculptures, they're things, they're like they're objects. They have to be experienced in the flesh.
They are experiences.
Yeah.
In essence.
Yeah, I mean, they're flesh-like, they're skin-like, hide-like, right? Because it's paper, and it's got that texture. So yeah, in an image, it looks ridiculous. Doesn't translate.
So you have the maquette, and then you cut the paper and put it up. And this is what I was thinking. It's like, where do you start? Where's that first mark happen?
Mm-hmm.
Does it start all the way to the left? Do you start in the middle? Are they all the same, or how?
Well, it starts with the ground. I mean, I go in with powdered charcoal and cover all the areas except for the ones that remain pristine white. I'll cover that with a light dusting of charcoal powder, just to get something on there, something I can work with, and start to get the grain. The grain is so important to me. It's not the grain of the paper. It's hot pressed, so it's smooth. It's not immediately evident. It only becomes evident when, after I've worked it heavily, like almost like rubbing it, only then does the grain emerge. But yeah, so that it gets a layer down, and then I can work into it.
With your hands, you're rubbing.
Yes, that's crucial.
Well, maybe that answers the next question. Why do you choose drawing? Is there something about drawing, and maybe it's that tactile quality that makes it more verb-like?
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned the word. We'll talk about the title of the show. Yeah, we'll go back to that. But the drawing has an immediacy to it. There's nothing mediating between your hand and the thing you're drawing on, at least not in my case, because a lot of it I'm drawing with my hands. It feels honest. There's something about it. It's the oldest medium in art, right? It goes back to our Paleolithic ancestors. And I do think about them a lot, actually, the cave drawings, because I use the same medium. I use charcoal. And yeah, I just think of them like touching those cave walls. There's something about the hands and drawing that is important to me, and that I think stimulates a certain kind of thinking that can be achieved no other way. Now, you could argue with me that, well, painters achieve that all the time. We can have that conversation, but I think there's just something about drawing, the purity of it, right? It's immediate, it's pretty fast.
Well, and the way you're doing it, there's no interference between your body and the surface.
Right.
There's no tool.
Right. There's no. I mean, I have charcoal.
Yeah.
But after I apply, I'm in there with my hands, rubbing it around. Yeah, and I think it's that hands-on action that makes them come to life.
You talk about in your statement primal form. And I read that as metaphor, perhaps, but maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, primal form, to me, primal forms are forms that are found in the natural world, natural landscape, that evoke our earliest origins as creatures, as beings. I want to say as a species, but it actually goes back well before that. So, for example, the ocean is one such form, primal form. I mean, that was our original home, right? We walked out of the ocean, we came out of the ocean, we come from there. So we have this deep bodily response to these forms. Another example is nest, things that resemble nests, caves, horizon I'm particularly fond of. What else? Forest, the forest. These are all primal forms that evoke our earliest homes, right? And we all carry that memory around in our bodies. And so not only do we respond to these forms in nature, but forms like human-made forms that are similar to, that are in some way morphologically similar to primal forms, elicit that same response. We just find them deeply, deeply moving. That's what it means to me.
Because it's our neurological inheritance.
Yes.
That our fields of perception have evolved in response to these things that have been around us,
right?
As we evolved as a species, and so it's locked in there. We're born with it,
yeah,
and we identify it. It resonates with us.
I mean, have you ever met anybody who didn't like the ocean? I mean, they might not like swimming in it, but just being at the beach, there's just something about that that's just so, it's more than beautiful, it's just profound, right? And same with the forest. I think that we carry around the feeling of home.
Yeah,
with those forms.
Yeah, this notion, neuroaesthetics, right? That
yeah.
Some things look good to us and some things don't because of this. There's a connection. I think it was, I can't remember which book, Gerda Smet's, 1972. There was a study done with toddlers, people of all ages, looking at patterns with certain redundancy in the pattern, and it didn't matter how old. Everyone looked longer at this one that was, I think it was 70% redundancy, which I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I didn't really need to know other than there is something from day one that pulls our eye in, this sort of aesthetic that I think artists are tapping into that, remembering.
Some, not all. Right, some are far less concerned with visual form and the, I would say, intelligence of visual form than in concept. Many artists today start with concept and use form as sort of the means to an end. Yeah.
Shall we get into talking about the title of the show?
Okay, yeah, we can do that. I thought you were going to say, should we get into contemporary art? No, not yet. So the title of the show, yes, very important to me. Drawing is a Verb. It came from about 2 years ago, I was asked to write a book review about a wonderful book, which Daniel brought because he's now reading it, or you just finished it. Called Architecture is a Verb by Sarah Robinson, who is herself an architect. And
great book.
Yeah, it really is. We'll get to why. It's hugely inspiring. I actually think that every young artist should read this book, okay? The book basically lays the theoretical groundwork for an emerging movement, a movement that's emerging right now in the field of architecture. I would say that essentially, and you can help me out here, essentially it's about bringing the human body back into the center of architecture.
Yeah.
Having been ignored and cast out by postmodern architecture. So the book is a response to two things: postmodern architecture. You know, the author calls it the inhumanity of postmodern architecture, which was all about the spectacle, right? You know, just anything goes, creative freedom, you know, bombast even. It's all about the ego of the architect. So there's that, and then more importantly still, it's really, the book is a response to recent developments in neuroscience, okay? And that's what got me. Actually, the other one did too, the other thing did too, but so a couple things I will say, just because it's going to form the theme of our conversation. I will say, many of you will know this, but one of the things that has emerged from recent neuroscience is that the body, the human body, is the source of our intelligence, okay? We live in a culture that holds that mind is separate from body, mind is master, body is servant, right? They've proven, neuroscientists have definitively proven, it's quite the other way around,
yes.
Right? Body is the source of our intelligence. Our entire cognitive apparatus arises from our bodily interactions with the world, right? Our embodiment in the world. That's been proven without a doubt. And then secondly, the body is a resonant body, all right? She talks a lot about that. And by that is meant that our bodies are always in conversation with our surroundings, like intimate conversation with our surroundings, quite beneath the level of our conscious awareness, right? You know, where it's transmitting signals and receiving all the time, right? And so you know, our environment doesn't just talk to us, it shapes us, it affects us profoundly. So you can see how this would appeal to architects, you know, being told that actually the shape of our built environment has a profound effect, not just on people's moods, but on their consciousness, their cognition, the kinds of things they think about, their assessments and valuations of things. Our buildings are kind of really doing a lot to mold what goes on in our interior lives. That's huge, right? And there are other things that come from neuroscience that are also of interest, but to me, those two alone, I started thinking, well, art is part of our built environment, so it stands to reason that art too is really doing something to us, you know? I mean, even if we don't know it, even if we just walk by something, it's doing something to us, to our bodies. It's really changing our moods, changing our cognition. And that's fascinating. You know, nowadays we tend to think that we artists are, you know, not very important in culture. We're sort of marginal. But if the things that we're putting out in the world actually really have an effect on people, you know, then we're actually really important. What we make matters. So that was the idea. I just wanted to think about, you know, I started thinking about my drawings as being, somebody put it, I was reading last night, I'm not sure if I like this, cognitive engineering, art as cognitive engineering.
All art is cognitive engineering,
yeah. I'm not sure if I like the engineering part, but anyway, the point is, you know.
The point is
these things are doing things.
Forming our thoughts, our thinking, our state of mind.
Yeah, really profoundly.
But we become really blind to it. I think since we have, I don't know if it's epigenetically or whatever, but I mean, it's only the last 200 years that we've been spending 95% of our time indoors.
Yeah.
You know, you can take an animal out of its habitat and you can't really expect it to be healthy. I mean, going to zoos has always been a depressing thing for me because it's like...
Going to what?
Zoos.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can see the animals are taken from their habitat, and it's terrible. And yet we've done this to ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
And we continue to do it to ourselves. You know, why do we live in rectangles?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something she gets into, is that, you know, I guess we could thank Descartes.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been drinking the Descartes Kool-Aid for 500 years.
Yeah.
I think, therefore I am, and there's a division between the mind and the body. A container.
Right.
The body is a container.
Right.
You know, and architecture is a container.
Right.
And that there's the body is not porous. It's sealed, but it is very porous. We breathe, we drink, we eat our surroundings.
Right. Right.
It's very porous.
Right.
But we, for whatever reason, I've been trying to figure this out. I guess it just gets passed in through generations, and we forget. You know, it makes me wonder if all the art in the last 200 years has been sort of a mnemonic reminder of our prehistoric connection to nature that is now missing. You know, bringing art into these strange things that we live in.
Yeah. How interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I find the idea, particularly with what's happening right now in contemporary art, I find it really interesting and important. This knowledge that what we make is actually really affecting people, you know, really shaping, you know, how they live in the world. Yeah, go on. I have to collect my thoughts on that for a second.
Yeah, well, this reminds me of something I asked you the night of the opening. When you're making these drawings, what is the motive? I'm always interested in what motivates artists. You know, going to art school, doing undergrad, doing grad school. I think no one I went to undergrad with is still making art, and as far as graduate school, maybe a handful. And you know, it really makes you wonder, what is the motivation here?
Right.
And so, you know, why make these?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something I think about a lot. Somebody asked me earlier, what gets me to my studio? And I said, because there's a problem to be solved. There's an open problem. For me, I mean, unfinished works are a problem, you know? And I can't stand it. I can't stand it being a problem. But the deeper reason is that I want this thing in the world. I want a certain thing in the world. I mean, I have it in my mind. I want it to be in the world because I want to stand in its presence. It doesn't exist. And if I could pay somebody else to make it, maybe, you know, that would work. But nobody else would make it the way that I want it made, right? So I have to make it.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. Is there something in the process that you would miss if you could have somebody make it?
I'm kidding.
You know?
Yeah.
I know, but I mean, this is just because I think about it for myself. You know, I haven't made a painting in a while, and I actually really miss the process.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of the painting. You know. Yeah. The process.
Yeah. Well, clearly, there's something about the deep engagement, the absorption, you know, with your material. I mean, I can't deny that there's that pull, just this pull, the pull of making, right? Of bringing into being, even if it's. I think, you know, I gave a talk not too long ago in which I stated that, you know, the process for me is actually torture. It's just pain, you know. But I think I overstated things. Because the point was, I was responding to people who say, your work looks so meditative. It must be so nice to just do that all day. I'm like, oh, would that it were so. It's just, no, it's pain. It's work.
But that it's hard, and you still find it worth doing is worth noting.
Yeah, there's something deeply satisfying about making, period. Yeah. Right? Making with your hands, I would say.
And there's something too that I feel about more and more now. When I grab my phone, you know, we spend most of our time on the phone, and
yes.
we do everything with these little tiny body movements. You know, there's not an equivalence for the outcome for these little movements. We can do big things in the world by taking small motions with our body, but with something like what you're doing, there's an equivalence in the outcome.
Yeah.
These marks can only be made in one way. I mean, I don't know, maybe a 3D. No, I don't think a 3D printer could. You know, there's something that equivalence of moving the body and
yeah,
you know, using the body, where we seem to be using it less and less. I mean, we're already once detached, if it's true, the notion of architecture being removed from nature. But then we're removing ourselves once again by going online more and more. We're twice disembodied.
We're doing it to ourselves, clearly.
So the process, to me, feels almost like an antidote to
yes,
or medicine or something.
Yes, I like
therapy.
that word, medicine. Yeah. Actually, here's the truth: is that I have a longing to engage in this touching. Okay, it's just really so much of it is about touch, touching the surface. The surface to me, it's alive. It's like as I said before, it's like a hide or skin. And the more that we are on their phones doing this, you know, that's only one kind of surface. I think we have an innate longing for and need for different kinds of textures. We crave it, just as we have a craving for different kinds of rhythms, you know, night and day. I mean, you know, imagine living in a place where you never experienced darkness. It would be torture. They do that in prisons, right? They keep the lights on all the time. It's torture. But anyway, so we have this longing for certain things that just as animals. And one of them is a range of different textures. And so the more I do this, the more I have this craving, this longing to go into the studio and just engage in this touching. But it's not just touching, because it's also bringing a visual form into being. So it's a need to create. Yeah, I guess I mean that's I can't really go any further. To create something with my hands by means of touch that is visual, right?
That's something else that was brought up in the book that I didn't realize. I've always thought, you know, vision is the primary sense. I used to say quarter of the brain or quarter of neural materials devoted to vision, but I think it's more like half.
Oh no, it's the hand.
Well, of the brain for vision. But yeah, what was in the book that I didn't really think about was the kinesthetic. You know, the sense of touch is really primary.
It's primary.
That's the first thing that we experience. Even in the amniotic fluid, we have that sense of touch, and I didn't really consider that.
The skin is the first organ to develop in utero. I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, the skin. It's argued that, you know, the skin is, we have a need for skin-to-skin contact that is deeper than the need for, you know, food and water. It's so basic. And, you know, one thing that I learned from doing further research after that book was that all the other senses are extensions of touch, arise from the touch experience. If you look at, you know, vision, it's full of metaphors for touch, right? You know, and for cognition is full of metaphors for touch, right? He can't quite grasp that idea.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's if you look into it, it's really evident that it's primary.
Yeah, I remember reading a book on neuroscience and saying something about how the brain is constructed, and the part of the brain that is doing touch is integrated with vision. And I thought that makes so much sense, because whenever I look at a painting and whenever I'm judging my own work, if it doesn't have the right texture, like that, that is really primary.
Yeah.
I feel like it dictates the visual, you know, And if that's not there, I just am not interested.
Yeah.
That kind of texture, and that's something else that your work has. When I talked about the little girl that was standing in the middle, I saw her go.
Oh, she touched it. I'm glad you didn't tell me at the opening.
I forgot to tell you.
Yeah, she was so cute though. I took a lot of pictures of her.
But it is really pulls you in.
Yeah.
You do want to touch these things.
Yeah. You know, I'm glad you said that about touch because I'm only realizing now at my age, having done this for 30 years, that touch is so important to the things that I make, right? The touch, the texture of it. If it's not right, I'm like you. If it's not right, even if the form is great, I'm completely uninterested. And I know immediately when I see another person's work of art, if the texture is wrong, not even interested. Like, it's really profound. And I'm only realizing now that I've sort of suppressed that because there's this thing in painting, well, in visual art in general, where vision is associated with mind and thought, right? And with reason is therefore higher and more rigorous and more, you know, right? It's
conceptual.
More conceptual is the word we get. Much more respectable. Whereas touch is bodily. It's associated with women, you know, and nature and all those lowlier things, right? So there was that unconscious stigma attached to touch that I was carrying around all these years and kind of downplaying its significance in my work. And only recently have I come to really just completely embrace it.
Yeah, I remember also in art school, you couldn't make something beautiful.
Oh yeah, right.
And have it also be smart or conceptual. You know, if it was conceptual, it usually didn't look so interesting. And I couldn't stand that. I think it is possible to bring them together in a way that's meaningful, arresting visually, and then further, if you want to know more, there is a lot of conceptual ideas there. And like you said, neuroscience, cognitive science is really backing up a lot of the things I think that we've been doing for many years. Mm-hmm. And we can not be embarrassed about it.
We never should have been, but now we're vindicated.
There's always apologetic.
Right, right.
But there's no need to be.
Beauty is a big one, right? One has to be a little bit embarrassed about that if you're engaged in beauty, making beautiful work, right? There's always that. Well, why? Why? You know, I mean, the more you think about it, again, this goes back to sort of reclaiming our existence as animals. There's nothing, everything else comes, you know, on top of that. But the basic fact is we're animals, and we've been, you know, evolving for millions of years. And so we have basic needs that are deeply ingrained.
Yeah.
You know, and beauty is one of them.
And why not use that? Why not use it in making art? You know, the notion that the body is not a container, that the mind is not just in the skull, that it extends into the body and it extends outside of the body. I remember reading a paper a couple of years ago that gave a good example of this, the spiders, the notion that spiders, they do very clever little things and scientists couldn't understand because their brains are like nothing. They basically don't have a brain. But when you apply the notion of extended cognition, that the webs that they weave are an extension of the nervous system, an extension of their brain out into the world, and the way that they interact with the web it explains a lot. You know, it's extending the nervous system into the world. Or earthworms is another notion I think she talks about in the book, where the soil that the earthworm is in becomes its kidneys, regulating water, something with water.
Yeah. I feel like here we might want to sort of define what we mean by extended cognition.
Good idea.
Yeah, because that, you know, this is not a common thing to know.
But one way to think about it is, all right, so the idea is that your cognition does not reside solely in your brain or in your body, okay? It is extended, it's like a field that extends into your environment. And so it's born of the interaction between, body, mind, and environment. And, you probably all had the experience of going somewhere, like let's say somewhere you used to live 30 years ago, and you go and you have this memory that you hadn't thought of in 30 years, right? It arose because your body and brain interacting with the site, where this, memory occurred, presumably, and then you had this idea. You want to say anything more about extended cognition, because it's so relevant to art and this idea of cognitive engineering?
Yeah, it ties into the notion of neuroaesthetics and what does art do?
Right.
I wanted to talk about that when I was in art school, but that was a big no-no. The art that does things is craft. And it's not high art, but
right.
This enables us to consider what is it doing for us? What is
right.
the purpose of it? Look at and why are people buying art? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. The notion that it's a place to invest your money, but the notion that it can actually do something for us,
right,
and create an environment that is conducive to well-being.
Right. That's the key. Because for so long art has been, what the art that's considered rigorous is conceptual art, right? What is that doing? It's maybe it's making us think, but it's also doing a lot of other things, because it is, if it's embodied in a form, it is speaking to our bodies and maybe communicating something else entirely, right? I just think that we really need to think a lot about what the art we're putting out there is doing.
Yeah.
I was going to go off on this whole thing about a book that I just read that I want to share with you, but I won't, but not now. But I think that, here's what I'm going to say. This idea that rigorous art, to be rigorous, you have to be conceptual. Okay, there's that thing. I don't know, you guys get that in art school? The assumption at SVA that to be making rigorous work, it has to be conceptual. You have to have a concept, you have to have a statement that tells people exactly what you're addressing, what you're interrogating. Am I right? If you're in fine arts, you do. Well, I would like to see that shift where, where rigor is redefined. You can be making perfectly rigorous work and have your intention be to put work in the world that promotes human flourishing, and I would add to that, because that doesn't sound right to me, human flourishing, the flourishing of all beings,
Well, that kind of brings up a question I was going to say for later, but maybe, what does it mean to be a successful artist today? We say we see so many fields change and adapt and grow. But, when you're defining success in art, it's always the same tired stories from decades ago.
Yeah. And
they're not really possible anymore, especially with fewer and fewer venues to exhibit. And, it's something I think about when I'm teaching. What does it mean to be successful? If so many of the people I went to school with don't make art anymore, how can we convey this to students and also think forward and what is art's role in society in the future? I mean, right now it's debatable what it is, right? And with AI coming and who knows what that's going to do. What role can art play, and what is a successful artist today?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I know what it has been. A successful artist is one who has a gallery, to represent them, preferably in multiple cities, and who makes a living off his or her work, right? That's a successful artist. So many artists today don't have that, right? Most artists I know don't have gallery representation, or if they do, they're certainly not making a living off their work. Are they not successful? I think we really need to redefine success. You know, I was thinking about it today, and I have the thought that I don't even know if I want to sell my work. Like, I don't even know if that's the idea, right? It's like I price them really high, so that, I kind of feel like I don't even want to sell them. And the reason is that I want them. I don't want them owned by a private collector. You know, that probably just end up in a closet somewhere in somebody's, whatever, penthouse apartment. But I want them out in the world. Like, I want them in public spaces where they can actually do things for just regular people, not people who go to galleries, but just people in the world. I think that would be, if I could have my work regularly doing that, like at the public library, for example. I mean, that would be so satisfying.
Yeah, the notion that a successful artist is someone that has embarked on a journey of discovery, a long journey, a trajectory with failures, experimentation, not being afraid to make mistakes, so to speak, but just not quitting and doing it because it's meaningful and has, we've talked about this, this kind of body equivalence and the intelligence of the body. I think there is great benefit to that, both for one's emotional well-being, but also cognitively. You know, if we think that the brain is extended into the hands, and it's pretty interesting when we became bipedal that the brain got so much larger, right? So I really do feel like there's some connection between the hands and the brain. You know, and neuroscience is showing us that you can actually rewrite the neural pathways of your brain with your hands, doing activity kind of like what you're doing.
Right.
There is huge benefit in that in a society that has so much pharmaceuticals being passed out for a problem that could be solved very easily just by using our hands.
Yeah. I just want to say parenthetically that I completely forgot to note when we started. So can you let us know when an hour, Colin? Do you know when we started?
Maybe it is an hour.
No, it's not yet. It's what? 50? Okay. And then we'll open it to questions. But yeah, is there anything more? I mean, is there anything specific that we left out? It feels like we just started.
Or we could what?
It feels like we just started.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, the next thing but we kind of got on a tangent there. I was gonna, the transcendence. You know, the sense of transcendence in this work. There definitely is a feeling of that, and what is your thinking about that and how it connects?
I think that's an important thing to talk about, because people always say to me, you know, your work is so spiritual, right? And I do not deny that at all. Completely, it is very spiritual. My problems with the word, because it has been so overused and misused and used by people that I don't agree with, right? Whose views I don't agree with.
Talking with different definitions.
Yes.
And you wind up talking about something completely different.
Yes. And particularly in art, right? It's, nobody wants to touch that word, right? It's been really kind of contaminated. I would like to see, just like I would like to see a reclamation of things like beauty, right? Touch, also of the spiritual. If we have to come up with a different word, that's fine. But I will say one thing. So people always use the word transcendence with my word. There's a sense, with my work, there's a sense of transcendence. And I feel uneasy about that word only because for me, this work is all about a radical embrace of our earthliness, right? The fact that we're beings born of earth, right? Born of earth and cosmos. We come up from below, not down from on high. I just don't, like, I think that in the history of art, modern art, transcendence meant, it suggested things like the immaterial realm, right? Think of like, Hilma af Klint, Mondrian, Kandinsky. They were, Mondrian was a theosophist. They were concerned with some higher plane, some other realm. So I think that when you use the word transcendence or allow that word to be used about your work, that's the default assumption, that you're sort of going back to that tradition of addressing this immaterial realm. And to me, that's so radically other than what I'm thinking. I'm thinking much more in terms of the new materialism in philosophy. We didn't really talk about that as an inspiration. That is, really all about sort of granting agency to matter. For me, I would say, and you use this word, it's a great word, immanence. If there's a spirituality in my work, it is one of immanence, where the sacred inheres in, is immanent in matter, in the earth, in me, in you. There's nothing to do with elsewhere.
And if we talk about luminosity, is it the same? Are they interconnected? Because there is definitely a sense of light. And actually, parenthetically, that we haven't talked about the name of the series and the inspiration. Maybe you should talk about that.
Sure. So the name of the series is Mirmaki. It's the Mirmaki series. Mirmaki is a Lutheran church in north of Helsinki, Finland. I have not been there myself, but I've studied it, intensively because I was introduced to it by this book, Sarah Robinson's book, and it's an incredible. It's a modern church. It's really known for its spectacular orchestration of light. Light is such a cherished thing in Finland. There's so very little of it, right? Light and heat. But so the architect, Juha Leviska, I should say his name, it's just a symphony of light. This light pours in from all these different directions and illuminates this complex geometry inside. And it's just, even looking at the pictures, you're just blown away. You're just filled with a sense of awe, right? And I knew in looking at those photographs, I knew I wanted to go there, and that I wanted to make art that elicited something of that feeling, okay? Michael Brennan, who is not here tonight, wrote a review of the show and said something like, light generated by hand. My work, it's light generated by hand. I thought that was so nice. Yes, it is about light. Light as an earthly here and now phenomenon. I don't really associate it with the spiritual, but many people do.
And the, like in this one, the verticals, looking at photos of that architecture, struck by the notion, I believe the trees were planted purposely, right? So the birch trees, right?
Yeah.
And planted, and as you're approaching it, you have all of these verticals, rhythm of verticals.
Yeah.
And it is quite beautiful how the architecture is mimicking that and echoing that.
But it's more than beautiful. It's more than because so the architect actually, he didn't just find the forest and plant the church there. No, he built the church and then planted the birch trees. So it's like, did you know that he actually planted those? So what he was doing, he wanted people to, preparing for the experience of being inside, to have this experience of walking through this miniature forest of birch trees, which look like that drawing, because that's why I made that drawing. They're very, linear and spare. But the birch trees are important because not just that they're beautiful, but that they create a rhythm, a certain rhythm that is inherently soothing and healing. This goes back to our, animal need for certain rhythms. So it's really those birch trees, that forest is engineered to induce in the passers-by this certain feeling of home, of home. That's what the rhythm induces. And then when they walk in there, they feel at home in this church, this light pouring in. So I love that example.
Yeah.
Everybody should look it up, the Miramaki Church. It's really incredible. It's a feast, even through photographs.
Yeah, it is. No, we might have, well, there's the notion, you know, we talk about a successful artist and what that means, and the fact that venues have dried up. Are galleries becoming obsolete? Does it matter where one shows anymore?
That's just a good question for our young artists in the audience. I mean, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you the question, but actually, my answer is that obviously we're in a time of great transition in the world at large, but also in the art world, right? We're transitioning, I think, out of the old gallery system and into something new. More and more artists are creating their own shows. I mean, there are all these pop-up shows, which are great. Artists taking control of the situation, right? Not relying on external validation, right, to show their work. Showing work online, which I have a problem with, but you know, it's another example of artists just getting their work out there, right? Yeah. It's great. Are galleries becoming obsolete? I don't know. I kind of hope so. I don't know. Because again, the main thing that I think, I mean, I can't tell you what's happening, but to tell you what I would like to see happen, and I'll ask what you'd like to see happen, is whether galleries become obsolete or not. I would like to see more art out in the world, right?
Yeah.
Out in the world, out of the galleries. And I would like, you know, and that could mean, you know, a friend's apartment, you know, put some white paint on the walls and invite a bunch of people. And it doesn't make your work any less good or valid that it's not being shown at Gagosian, right? I'm all for the DIY thing for art. I really am. Because the gallery system is right now so problematic, right? It's become so commercial and everybody knows what the problem is. We'll go into it. But I would like to see art out in the public sphere.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I'd like, you know, I think about art in the future and I get, you know, it looks a little bleak. You know, there's, what we see, we have that narrative, the story of what success means and, you know, people buying it for the sake of investing. But how could it be tied into society more? I really feel that creativity is something that is going to get us through the coming decades with AI. I think we need to become more in touch with that. The notion that artists today are never just artists. Economically, we're forced to be something else. I do this and I'm also that. You know, maybe we need to be more like Bali, where there isn't even a word, apparently. I haven't looked into this, I saw this. There isn't even a word for artist or art because everyone has a creative role and makes art. And the notion that if we taught art differently from the beginning, because I see, you know, I have two kids and I see the art that they got and it's a joke. That if they got it, they really didn't.
Right.
But if we take the things that we have learned from cognitive science and neuroscience and use it so that the average person on the street has some aesthetic knowledge to know how they see, what they're seeing, and why is it worth looking. Then I think maybe it can be integrated. And if everyone has some kind of creative practice, and it doesn't have to be, you know, showing a Gagosian, but just this meaningful practice, doing something with your hands, getting unplugged from the internet, and having this body equivalence, and working with your extended mind, you know, perhaps there would be more appreciation for art. And And as she says, you know, this notion of architecture, if it could get into architecture, because I feel like, you know, I said this to you before, I live in an old apartment. It was built 100 years ago, and I feel like it was, you know, this bad idea in somebody's head 100 years ago, you know, yeah. And I have to live in it daily. The notion that we could create environments that create a better place to live in, and that is worth paying more for. Yeah. You know, because part of the aesthetic too is profit margins, right? You know,
right.
But to create environments that are caring for us, you know.
It's happening in architecture and design. I would like to see it happen in the fine arts. You know, I think we should really get on board. I would argue there is an emerging movement. It's very small, a movement of, I don't know, 3 or 4.
Well, the 2 of us.
Yeah, at least 2, moving in that direction. But the thing is that you have to convince people that it's better than the alternative, which is to, come on, maybe it'll happen for you. Maybe I'll just show a good gosh if I work hard enough and, you know, meet the right people. We have to prove that it's better than that.
Exactly. Right? We have to just get rid of that old story. You know, it's just.
But you have to show them something better.
Yes, and I think this book has it. You know, it's about architecture, but it really is about art as well.
Well, I think a new book needs to be written.
Yes.
Yes,
I agree with
we should get on that. Yes. Yeah, because it's going to be different for art, right? So it's different.
It is, yes.
Right.
I think that is an hour.
Is that a good way to end it? Okay, well, let's have some questions then. Oh, sure, yeah. Questions? Anybody?
Well, I'll just put as an observation, just connecting some dots in your conversation. The dots being the transcendent, perhaps the quotation marks around that one, about materialism, about light,
yeah,
and the true materiality in your work. When you think about it, your light is the paper. You know, it is the one pure paper is where the ultimate light is.
Right.
So you're actually doing what you're saying you're doing, in the sense that all those things are coming together with that. Literally, if you walk into this room, you see that, you see that, you see all of them. Everyone's eyes are going to that light.
Yeah.
And the irony is, there's the one spot on that entire sheet of paper that does not.
That's so beautiful. I love that observation. I love it. Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for that. Did you everybody hear that? Yeah, okay. You wanted me to repeat, but yeah, thank you for that.
Using an artist statement, but I get 5% of all profits.
You got it. Yeah.
More practical.
Sure.
But I'm curious, which drawing here you did first?
Okay. First, yeah, that one there, and then I guess I did this one, and then the ocean over there with the big sky, with the big sky, and then this was, I want to say it's the last big one, yeah. This a couple small ones are very recent. Really?
I guess that these came first.
Yeah.
And then this was an evolution.
Interesting. Why? I'm just curious why you thought that.
I don't know. It was just kind of intuitive. I mean, this is a concentration.
Yeah.
Of what you're exploring here.
Yeah.
It's more direct.
Yeah. It was also, I'll be honest, it was a difficult move to abandon the bands, because the bands to me are so, well, they're rhythmic, right? They provide that rhythm, and it's just so, it does something to my body. And so to make a piece without them and have all this empty space, it's not empty, but It took me a long time to take that leap. And the next leap is going to be, I have to try this. It doesn't sound interesting, but I have to try this. Just the ground, like it's gonna shift, some darker, some lighter, it's going to shift, but it's just that charcoal ground. There are no events on it. I just have to try it, that's all. If it's not successful.
I was thinking you have to do that.
Really?
Yeah. It's fascinating.
That's what I want to
Seems
do.
like the natural thing. Well, what happens if?
See, here's the thing though, Rosaire, does this happen to you? Because I'll have an idea and then I'll think, that's so simple. Like it can't possibly be interesting.
And then you do it, it's fantastic.
Right, that's the only way you know. But so same with this, if I,
Courage. It's just courage.
okay,
Follow it.
thank you. I will, thanks for giving me permission. That's what I want to do. I've been wanting to do it for a couple months.
So do you feel when your work is in a place like this, does it make you anxious because they're so vulnerable just without anything?
Yes.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
Are they
No.
anything on them? So they really are vulnerable.
Yes, and the reason is, okay, yes, I should be,
No, there are no shoulds.
okay.
Should not have little girls here.
So if there are any collectors here, raise your hand. I won't say it if there are, because for them, I should be fixing it, you know, protecting it from UV rays and all that. But no, I don't. I just want it just to be as fragile and vulnerable as a human being, you know. It's not going to last forever.
How do you move them without smudging?
To be honest with you, yeah. No, it makes sense. It's probably, so you think of charcoal and you think of something powdery sitting on the surface of something. This is not that, because this charcoal has been so thoroughly rubbed into the fiber that, you know, I mean, it wouldn't come off of my hand. That said, you know, if you went up there with a cloth and went like that, you would see the swipe. But I'm careful and I cover them with glassine. Yeah, not a problem. Back here, yeah.
Actually, I wanted to ask this earlier. It follows up really well with that question about how do you take care of it? How do you control who is nearby it? You know, how do you control that there's no little girls around? How does that work? Controlling the little girl. That's not a great way to start my question.
Right.
But how does that also dovetail with your with wanting to have art be more accessible, with wanting to be able to come and hang your art if someone's waiting on this, with wanting to have your art in the public library, with wanting to have art be in the public square. I'm thinking about this right now, so I would love to hear any thoughts about how to combine those, how to collaborate in between those two points of view, the archival point of view, right?
Right.
The control point of view and the people's square, you know, people need to be able to access this in order to change.
Yeah, we can put our heads together on it because I don't have the answer. But I'll tell you one thing. I don't want them framed. I won't have them framed. Like if they were shown in the public library, we might have to come up with a way to fix, by that I mean, you know, spray fix them, put fixative on them. I would probably ask a conservator, see if there's something they could put on them to at least protect them from, you know, for example, wine spilling, you know. Yeah, I worry about that. But other than that, I'm willing to just let what happens happen.
So it's important enough to you.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Somebody else? I think there was some up here first. Yeah, well, then we'll go back there.
In the beginning, Dan, you were talking about immersive quality. And for me, what's extraordinary about Taney's work is, I wouldn't say immersive, I would say intimate. That the work is so intimate, and it's intimate. The larger scale work is intimate in a very different way than the smaller work. It envelops you in an intimate way that larger work. Smaller work, you go close to it. And the touch it's a very intimate sensation that you have because of the touch. I mean, touch, you know, I know that's so important to you. I mean, apparently, according to some psychologists, the first touch of our skin with our mother's skin is what makes us possibly, you know, healthy adults.
Right, for sure.
But yeah, I find that you may not like this, but I find that some of the work is, I would, for lack of a better word, I would call intimate immateriality.
Okay.
Intimate immateriality. Because for me, these are very much about the immaterial world.
I know. We've argued, yeah. Yeah.
And to me, they're like koans. The great koan, form is emptiness.
Oh, koans, yeah.
You know, particularly this one.
Yeah.
This is, I believe, one of the last.
It is the last one.
Yeah, I find that infinitely mysterious.
That's amazing. And you know what? I'm really glad that you're pushing back on this, you know, my attack on the immaterial, because I'm not right. I want it to be, you know, I don't know that I'm right. I want it to be a conversation, but I don't think there are enough people arguing the opposite side, that it's really immanence, this world, no other, you know, plane, no other plane exists, right? So that's why I take kind of a hard stand on that. But I want to continue our conversation.
It's the inseparability of
I get it.
immaterial and material. So
I get it.
that is rendered in such a way that presents us with that unity.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thanks so much. Grace, you had something?
I was thinking a lot about your other pieces,
Mm-hmm.
And how the grounds are a lot larger than all of these.
Yeah.
And I feel like in a way, these feel a lot less like the fading quality of the charcoal treatment, and then we talk about like the symbolic quality of the work that I was wondering if this kind of natural history quality of the work is something where like they do really like the book nature.
Really?
So I was wondering if that's like I just wanted to
Yeah, that is a really interesting comment, because somebody said to me at the opening, your older series looked like things. For example, the form could look like a flower, okay? But this work is something. The old work looked like something, this work is something, doesn't look like it. So it's interesting to hear that you say this is more naturalistic. I'm definitely moving in this direction. I have to think about how, I am just glad that it feels naturalistic. It feels of this earth. It feels.
Right, yeah. When I think of the other pieces, like I think the subject is more about like the shape.
Yes.
And now that I'm looking at it, this is
Yeah.
So in a way, they like evoke nature.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm really glad you said that. And of course, anything that evokes like light streaming in a space, you know, light and shadow will evoke something in the world. So I'm really glad that you experience it that way. Thank you. We had somebody in the back first, and then we'll go to you. Yeah.
I want to continue the topic of touch.
Okay, you're gonna come touch it?
I guess it's Eric Kendall, and he analyzed the abstraction techniques with in a neuroscience perspective. And he pointed out that one of the importance of those very rough brush strokes from those famous abstract techniques is that they can be touched with our eyes. And so it's not just a sense of our skin, it's also a sense of our eyes happening in our brain. So when I saw your work very closely, and I maybe your labor, I'm not sure labor is the correct word here, and you rub and soften the charcoal again and again, and you change the attribution of the watercolor.
Yeah.
And they become very fluffy.
Fluffy?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Fluffy texture.
Yeah.
So, and my another question is,
I love that.
put some East Asian philosophy or experience in your journey?
Yes.
That's what your learning experience in college.
Yes, yes, absolutely East Asian influence. Yes, I know. I love Chinese landscape painting more than anything, more than any kind of painting. Yeah, I mean, just the negative space, the emptiness, the void, and the embrace of nature. You know, the love, real love of nature, and the humility of, you know, when the figures appear in those paintings, they're like this big compared to the mountains. I love that. I love this thing about Eric Kandel. That's fascinating because I have to go back and read him again. But yes, I totally agree. There is a way to touch with the eye, right? There's also a way to see without the simulated touch. So they're both ways of seeing. And we could really explore the difference between the two. And obviously I advocate for the kind that really feels like touching. It's simulated touch. Yeah.
Mirror neurons.
Yes, yes. But then there's the kind that's detached, like the modernist, you know, detachment, the spectatorial eye that's completely, you know, disembodied, let's say, right? The eye disembodied. I mean, you come across that in Clement Greenberg, for example. But thank you for that. That's great. Yeah, John, go first.
So back to the materiality versus immateriality, which is a good conflict to have, and that this work sort of brings that up. I'm for the materiality part because I think what your work does is sort of reminds me of the fact that light is really a substance.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a cloud of photons.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily coming from another world. You know?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the drawings have that capacity to sort of make me want to stick my hand through this light substance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a bit like when light is coming through a window in the morning, let's say, it helps if there's a little bit of dust. That's like, you kind of feel this like three-dimensional quality.
Yeah, I love that. Light as material substance. I love that. Yeah, and that, you know, when you experience light like that, it really makes you want to worship the sun. You know, we're so dependent upon that thing up there, right? It's giving us so much every day. Somebody else had a question? Yes.
I was looking at this video and I saw a lot of these before. I feel a lot of same idea in your work, like as your poetry. Yeah. Do you think you she just mentioned you study a lot of like education philosophy? Do you think you just combine some Zen idea into
Zen ideas?
Yeah.
Yes, and by the way, I didn't recognize you. Hello, because I only saw you online. We were Zoom, Zoom teacher. Zen influence, yes, absolutely. I'm not a Zen Buddhist, but I have studied it before, and I love it. It's one of the, I guess, schools. It's the school of Buddhism with which I feel most at home. Yeah. Yeah. So, what particularly strikes you as what reminds you of Zen about the work? Why do you think of Zen with the work? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Have you been there? Yeah, I'm dying to go there. I know. Just, yes, the simplicity, like, I'll tell you, this will sum it up for you. My favorite artist of all time is Noguchi, right? I have a, yeah. Japan is close to my heart. Yeah, the aesthetic, I love it. Nothing is more profound. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
And for me, my first impression about the linear pattern, I think the gradient makes them look really different.
Yeah.
So at first, I just talked about the complexity about the texture, and for me, my first step because I think the texture is so similar with the carpet, and the line also reminds me of really yes, just like intentional the surface of the attention in Asia, like the bamboo.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great. That's great. Yes, they do look three-dimensional, right? That's really important to me that they not be stripes, right? Like I don't want to make a stripe painting. I didn't want them to be flat. I wanted for them to be a little bit of an illusion of, you know, volume, and then to have there be the sense that you're looking through these things, the bamboo shoots, you know, looking through to seeing this thing that you can see, but only just barely, right? I love it. I love that. Thank you. The what of the pencil? Oh, yeah.
Pressure.
Yeah. So you see the pressure of the pencil. Yeah. That's really interesting. Yes, correct. That's actually, the darkest areas are where I'm pressing, obviously, yeah, really hard with a graphite stick. So that's, you know, the darker edges of those bamboo shoots. Graphite stick, yeah. You guys are great.
I want to say something positive about galleries.
Do.
I mean, look at this gallery. Look at this gathering. A place for gathering. We can see stuff on the walls. It's not, doesn't have a lot of advertising and things around it. It's a pure space. And it brought all these people together.
Rosaire?
This is fantastic.
Thank you.
It's happening all over the place. Not at the big Chelsea gallery.
Yeah.
Where you can also see great stuff. But there's so many small galleries all over Manhattan.
Yeah.
This is what it's all about.
It is.
I'm so glad you said that.
Fantastic. The gallery scene right now is terrific.
I want to say thank you for that, and I love the spirit of that, but I also want to say this has been a total DIY operation.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, why does it have to be anything else? It happened.
It happened. This is my point. This is my point.
Yeah.
I did the whole thing. This is my point. You can make a show happen. All, you know, just find a space, you do everything yourself, and you do it all right.
That was the motive of the question. You know, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, you know, wasn't that long ago you did something like this and it would be you know, a little sketchy. But now I think, yes, it has changed. Yeah.
I love it. Yes, you're absolutely right. The students should hear that. It was a very positive note. Yeah, it is changing. And the fact that it got reviewed, right? You would think that, oh, it's really not even a real gallery, you know, she just did this whole thing herself, right? Well, some publications I won't mention didn't even bother to come in, you know, but that's their loss, whatever.
And you did it.
Right. Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
I have a question for you. You mentioned architecture and new architecture. Complain about your architectural space that you live in. What's wrong with it?
Well,
it's rectilinear architecture is sort of, you know,
it's stupid. It's just it's not conducive to living.
Easy to build.
Well, I'm a carpenter, so I'm well aware of what is easy to build, and I think that you know, the environments that she's talking about, and that I envision would be expensive right now to build. It wouldn't, you know, for materials and processes, that would be difficult. But the space that, you know, got 2 kids, my wife and I, 4 of us living in basically a hallway. It's just stupid.
Right, so one of the railroads. I mean, that's a stupid layout, right?
I try to imagine, what were they thinking?
Yeah, you can't figure a solution out.
Well, we looked it up, and actually, we complained to ourselves about living in there, but we looked it up, and actually, like 4 families used to live in this one unit. And then I think, oh, wow, not bad.
Huh. Yeah, well, a lot of architecture is, it's just a box. There's no effort made to create differences, rhythms.
It's a container.
It's a container, yeah, it's a container. For example, one thing that Sarah does is she puts cork on her walls. She's an architect, so the building, they always have like a room with just cork walls. It's beautiful to look at. It does something magical with the sound, right? You can touch it. It's got this great texture. You know, something simple like that. Like just every little detail, every little architectural detail could be attended to and purposely designed to you know, enhance the human flourishing of the people who are living there.
Yeah, you know, we talk about the primal forms. I think the mind recognizes itself in the sea, the cave, the forest, because that is part of the elements of the mind, because that's how we evolved with that. And now being in this, it's stifling. Well, I think the solution is art. You know, we make art to make our surroundings better, you know.
I mean, they make architecture out of shipping containers, make them livable and beautiful. So you can take a rectilinear space and figure out a solution to make it a unique and artful place. It's not defined.
Been doing that for 20 years.
It's defined by the rectangle. Defined how you treat it.
I understand, yeah.
Right.
I find that's going to be tough because I'm seeing all of these luxury apartments going up, and they're just another update of the rectangle.
Yep.
You know, they might look fancy and all the luxury that but basically half of the people start hating it. You know, so you know, then you have another generation before you go all out of that. Especially in this area, Jersey, just going up everywhere.
And what is it doing to them, right? To their minds, and they don't even know. It's not even going on, you know, it's beneath the level of their conscious thought, so they don't even know. But I think there are sterile rectangles and beautiful rectangles. There's different kinds of rectangles you can live in.
Inside windows. I mean, some rectangles have nice big windows.
Right.
Think of the low-income housing, and wow, that's just discouraging. You just look at little tiny.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it does.
And why would anybody in a place like that pay attention to picking up trash bin?
Right.
Everything is ugly.
And also, it's made them feel bad for so long. If you feel bad, you're not really inclined to pick up a piece of trash. Right.
And since we've grown up in it, we're not aware that that's happening. It's just normal. That's another thing art can do, is it makes you sensitive and aware to your surroundings and be able to pinpoint what's going on.
Right, right. Yeah. Indeed. Any more questions? I think that's it then. Yeah?
You can't handle that. I'm like,
oh, you want to? Okay, ask one.
I don't know. Well, it's only saying that because it's been so enlivening, helpful, and then just maybe it's realistic, but to feel sort of a weight coming in right at the end.
Oh, no. Okay, we can't do that. Okay, right. So would somebody ask a different kind of question?
Yes, please.
Grace. Okay.
All of their the regularity, especially with gradient, it's not like it seems like it's very unified, but it's not. But in this case, it's very symmetrical. I wasn't approaching as intended for this molecule. Everything else feels very irregular.
Right. Yeah, I know that piece does feel different. Yeah, I just made that, I don't know, like 2 days before the show. I just was really, honestly, was experimenting. It was a little study that I was doing, and I decided, midway through that I kind of liked it. So I don't know what to think yet, frankly, because it's so new, and I just haven't spent a lot of time with it. But yeah, it is different, and who knows, maybe I'll go in that direction and continue to go in other directions.
But what I like is the irregularity. It's not you can tape it.
Oh, no.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You feel the hand at your hand, and it is, to me, it's slightly irregular.
It's soft.
It's soft.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it isn't.
Right. Yeah.
It is and it isn't.
Yeah.
And I just thought of another one.
Okay.
Symmetry.
Yeah.
Is it important to you?
No. I mean, no, not particularly. In fact, it's kind of like, it's like a
They
little
are
bit,
pretty symmetrical.
I know, but it's sort of like an irritant on my shoulder. Just thinking of symmetry. It's like symmetry has kind of a bad rap in art. It's really boring. It's so my pieces have tended to be symmetrical, but that's how it's been. No, I don't have a special fondness for it. This one is not symmetrical. Yeah, it just, whatever the piece has to be. And again, it goes back to the beginning of just feeling this thing happening, and oftentimes they end up to be symmetrical, but it is just, I do what it has to be. Yeah.
I make very symmetrical work, and I feel like it's tying in with that primal form.
Yeah, okay.
It's echoing the body. We hear in stereo, and we binocular vision, and it's echoing the fields of perception of the human body.
It's definitely very pleasing to the eye. There's something, I mean, there's no doubt about that, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, bilateral symmetry is something that occurs not just in us, but,
It's everywhere.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right.
I forgot that one.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm curious whether you had a different feel when you were working on that, or it was.
Because their lines are horizontal?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was just a different sense of rising. When you have this, there's a different sense of rising. Is it heavier? I don't know. I'm doing this because that's me thinking. I don't know. It is different from this, isn't it? Yeah, the vertical band repetition thing pulls down the whole way across. And this one, I don't know. I don't even know how to say it, but yes, it definitely felt different. It felt, the weight is different. The pull is different. Yeah.
And the feeling of working on it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because yeah, the weight, the stroke, the direction of the stroke's different. Yeah. Thanks. Anyone else? That's probably a good way to end it. Thank you all so much. That was really great. Thank you.